Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Judge Gregory Johnson, Bell County Justice of the Peace, and you are listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast for all 254 counties. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome to Texas County Voice. I'm Jody Seaburn with the Texas Association of Counties. My guest today is Chambers County Sheriff Brian Hawthorne. Sheriff Hawthorne represents the Sheriff's Association of Texas as its legislative director and has been busy these past few weeks meeting with legislators about the association's priorities, and he joins us today to go over some of those. Sheriff, welcome to Texas County Voice.
Well, Jody, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be a little bit of a voice for county government and for sheriffs.
Well, before we get into some of the Sheriff's Association's priorities, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been Sheriff of Chambers County?
So I just started my fourth term, so I have finished 12 years. Prior to that, I did a career with the Department of Public Safety, and I was a state trooper and a highway patrol sergeant. Then my last year, I worked for the director at the state capitol as a legislative liaison attached to his office.
What motivated you to get involved with county government, to run for sheriff?
Well, I always say there's always a story to everything. So I was a sergeant with the Department of Public Safety and living in Chambers County, and there were some problematic issues that were taking place inside the sheriff's office, and I was approached by a county commissioner and a justice of the peace and a handful of people to consider running for sheriff. And many people know my wife. Actually, more people know my wife than know me. And so Heather, who's our elected county clerk, and she was the elected county clerk at the time, she and I discussed it, and she probably tried to do everything she could to talk me out of it. But I went ahead and put my name on the ballot, and here we are today.
In fact, since you mentioned your wife, Heather Hawthorne, who's the county clerk in Chambers County, the two of you are featured in our current county magazine, a little Valentine's Day feature as one of our county couples.
Yes. No, and she was probably more flattered than I was, so to speak. Meaning there's no doubt that she and I have totally and completely enjoyed our roles as elected officials. We try to keep our offices separate as far as in actual professional work, but there's plenty of times where my office and her office have a tendency to, need to work together on certain projects. But she's very good at what she does, and I'm very proud of my wife and very proud of the success of her office.
Well, how long have you been involved with the Sheriff's Association?
So I got involved with the Sheriff's Association just as soon as I became a sheriff. And probably some of that was because I was very involved in the Department of Public Safety Officers Association, and I was legislative director over there for a little while, and then I ultimately became the president. And I did 4 terms as president of the Department of Public Safety Officers Association. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to then get involved in the Sheriff's Association of Texas when I became an elected sheriff.
And this is since I've been at TAC, I know this is at least your second session as legislative director.
So correct. It's actually my third. It's my third. And I'm excited to say that I followed a couple of other really good legislative directors that were sheriffs. A.J. Louderback, who is now a House member. He was also the director of the Legislative Committee. And also Jim Skinner, Sheriff of Collin County. Jim, and now he's the legislative director for the National Sheriff's Association. So he's doing a lot of work with Congress right now on behalf of sheriffs across the nation and obviously us here in Texas.
Describe your role as legislative director.
Well, it's an appointed position by the president. So whoever the president of the SAT is, and selects their whoever they want to handle the legislative committee and the issues at the Capitol. So currently, Ricky Jones is the sheriff that is our president, and primarily it's just trying to make sure that bills that are filed that have a direct influence on the office of sheriff are realistic, and they're things that we can actually meet and do. Because it's not that uncommon for the legislature to try and file a bill that's just not realistic. We deal with it in county government every day. I mean, the county judges deal with it every day, the clerks, the treasurers. And so it's primarily just making sure that the bills that get filed, that we can either slow them down or stop them, or we can improve them, or that we can help promote them if they're a good bill. From a Sheriff's Association, we are not a group that does a lot of writing the bill and trying to get somebody to move and pass it. We really find ourselves more on a defensive position, trying to take bills that somebody has already written and have filed and help try to improve it and either do amendments or substitutes to make that a working bill. Because obviously the legislature wouldn't be filing the bill if somebody, a constituent or the legislator himself, doesn't think there's something that a sheriff could do to help Texas be a better place. And so that's what the job of the sheriff over the legislative committee is, just really about trying to make sure it's good legislation that we're working on.
Well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you've been a frequent visitor to Austin since the session began on January 14th, and you'll continue to be here in town throughout the session. What are some of the priorities that sheriffs are paying attention to? What are the association's priorities?
So we always do a priority list, and so currently we've named our priority list the 10 most wanted, and there are 10 items that they may not always stay that exact same 10. So as legislation changes and develops, our top 10 list could easily fall off. And then we also have a list of things that are kind of on the peripheral, where we just are watching them. We're not particularly trying to move any legislation. We just don't want anything that's going to be filed that potentially could hurt the office. But you know, a couple of the top ones that we're dealing with right now is the rural law enforcement grant. That
Yes.
So the Lieutenant Governor, we worked real close with Lieutenant Governor last session, and he and Senator Huffman did a really good job of helping us get essentially $330 million to be pushed out to rural law enforcement. And the intent was to try and help with salaries, help with everything from cars to safety equipment, things that rural Texas doesn't have in relation to the big cities or the big counties that have a lot of financial resources. So our number one item on our top 10 is to protect those funds. So those funds are really important to us. The Lieutenant Governor has truly done his part and kept his word. He told us last session that he was going to make sure it was in the base budget, because there was a lot of county judges and commissioners that were very hesitant on accepting those rural law enforcement funds because they were afraid they wouldn't be perpetual. Lieutenant Governor told us that he would do everything he could to make sure that they were perpetual. And at this point, it looks like he's truly holding up his end of the bargain, because it clearly is in the base budget. So we feel confident. What we want to do is make sure that that money is used properly, it's used in the way that the Senate and the House of Representatives wanted the money to be spent, and that we want to make sure that it's perpetual. So anybody that's trying to infringe or trying to get into that money, we're real careful about trying to pay attention to what they're doing.
Yeah, I believe the Lieutenant Governor made that pledge to county officials at our 2023 legislative conference.
He sure did.
And he
did.
appeared before the conference. And that bill was known as Senate Bill 22 in 2023. Of course, this session, Senate Bill 22 will be a different bill.
Correct.
But that is the law enforcement grant program you're talking
Correct. And that's, like I say, it's last session's bill. And so now there are no bills that are actually tied to that SB 22. Now there are being bills that are being filed. I think most of all of them are in the House right now, that are people trying to get into that pot of money. To our knowledge, there's nothing in the Senate that we're aware of. And obviously it's not called SB 22 money, but it's
Right.
that fund that's in the base budget. And like I say, we're not against other people taking advantage of some of the fruits of it. We just want to make sure that more money is added to it. And if they're not going to add more money to it, then we're going to do our best to try and really protect that fund, because rural Texas, especially some of these, when you take a $250,000 grant from the state to put into a commissioner's court to use inside the sheriff's office, that's almost a third or half of the entire county's budget,
Right.
all right, depending upon the size of the county. So $250,000 can go a long way for a rural sheriff in his commissioner's courts, whether it's to buy cars, whether it's to use salaries. So it's been a very effective tool for rural Texas. So another item that we're working with, Jody, is border operations and Operation Lone Star. So the governor came out with Operation Lone Star. You know, it's been out for a while now. And if you were a county like my county, like Chambers County, that you declared the influx of illegal immigration as an emergency, and you declared it as an emergency, then you were eligible for Operation Lone Star funds. So numerous counties did do that. Our county was one of them, and so those Operation Lone Star funds that have been coming out of the governor's office, we're still in support of what the governor's trying to do, trying to help combat the illegal immigration issue. Whether or not it will continue at the same rate now that the federal administration and change of president, and there's a lot of obviously things that are taking place that none of us have any control over. But we do want to make sure that the governor's office continues to have that Operation Lone Star so that, one, we can either do what the governor's been doing the last couple of years, or we can continue to now assist the federal government.
What is another priority or two?
So we are also very much involved in the movement of banning THC.
That's one of the lieutenant governor's priorities too. Right?
It is, and it is a Sheriff's Association priority. So the Sheriff's Association of Texas believes that we aren't against THC. We're against THC being on the street. And what we mean by that is that THC can literally, every 12 and 13-year-old kid can buy it at the corner store if he knows where to buy it, how to ask, and has the money to get it. And what we would like to see is THC to be banned to a 0.00 unless it goes through some kind of a regulated program. So currently we have what's called CUP. Some people call it CUP. It's actually the Compassionate Use Program. It's kind of established, for people that are have cancer or epilepsy or certain illnesses or conditions that THC is proven to help them. Well, we're not against that program expanding. I mean, honestly, from a sheriff's perspective, we don't want to tell somebody when they should or shouldn't be using THC. We'll leave that to the doctors and to the politicians that regulate that. What we want to do is try and keep it away from the 12, 13, and 14-year-old kids. That it's just become I don't want to call it a household thing, because we'd like to think it's not in everybody's household, but it has become a problem in just about every junior high and high school. THC, the THC vaping, the gummies, shouldn't be in the hands of our youth.
Right. So it's showing up in products that are readily available at
Correct.
the corner store.
Correct. So we're hoping that the legislature will expand the compassionate use program, or call it whatever they want. I mean, there are a lot of people that use THC for insomnia and all kinds of other issues. We're not against that. That's
Right.
totally up to them and their doctor, but we want it out of the hands of the teenagers.
Well, let's talk briefly about mental health, because it's often said that the biggest mental health provider in Texas are our county jails, and the sheriff runs our county jails. So talk a little bit about that issue.
So two things I think are really important when it comes to mental health is you are correct. There's no doubt. I don't know of a county one that the county jail isn't the largest mental health hospital, unless you're a couple of those counties that actually have state mental health hospitals in them. Otherwise, the rest of them are, no doubt, seem to have it. The local mental health authority, I think, is probably the one thing that I would want to focus on. And I sit on my local mental health authority board of directors. I encourage all the sheriffs to visit with their county commissioners and judge and see if you can be a appointed voting member of your local mental health authority. The sheriff does have the ability to sit on the local mental health authority as a member, but a non-voting member. All right, but if your county commissioners appoints you to it, then you become a voting member. So I try to encourage that. But I hope the legislature will continue to fund local mental health authorities properly, because they're really the only resource that a sheriff has to help deal with the issues, not only inside the jail, but the issues outside of the jail. Unless you're just a very wealthy and robust county financially, it's very expensive to bring in some of these private entities that help manage the mental health issues in the jail. So it's very costly. We have found, at least in Chambers County, that it is in the best interest of our taxpayers if we use the local mental health authority and we do a contract with them and we pay them to come in and try and service and help our mental health crisis people that are in the jail.
Right.
So I two things. We need funding from the legislature outside of the jail to try and keep people from ending up in the jail. But then when they do end up in the jail, we need funds to help manage them inside our jail till we get them through the criminal justice system. And that in itself is a real problem, because what happens is they'll get arrested for committing a crime. They end up in the jail. Then it becomes a competency issue. And then we sit on them for a long time. Long time. Let's just say it. Some of us have got them for hundreds and hundreds of days sitting in our jails because of competency issues.
Yeah, it's an ongoing issue. It's been going on for decades. And we have covered the issue before on Texas County Voice, and I'm sure we will cover it again at some point.
Oh, it's not going to end anytime soon, not in this legislature or the next.
Right.
And the problem that I see, and I'm not afraid to tell people this, is that the mental health crises are more and more common, and we're seeing people go into crisis more often. And if you visit and you talk to those people that end up in these crisis scenarios, you'll find that many times it is becoming some form of illicit drug induced. And whether it's methamphetamine, Adderall, we could go on and on.
Right.
And we're just finding that so much of the mental health issues that we're dealing with are from some form of substance abuse. And the one of them I think that we're really seeing a lot now is what I call the fake marijuana. Some people call it K2. There's all kinds of chemicals that are made to look like marijuana, that you can smoke them, you can chew them, you can do all kinds of different things. And they're just chemicals, chemically based product. And probably the most common name is K2. And that has really hurt a lot of people. And I don't think the average person realizes that how dangerous that stuff is, how addictive it is, and how mind-altering it is. And I don't mean temporarily mind-altering. I mean permanently mind-altering. So we see it. Sheriffs see it all the time because we see who's coming in and out of our jail, and it's usually substance abuse is causing the mental health issues.
Well, Sheriff Hawthorne, thank you for stopping by. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we leave?
You know, the only thing I could tell you is that between myself and my lovely wife, Heather, that we are huge TAC advocates. And part of the successes that she and I have had have been all because of TAC and the resources that TAC gives county government. So I will always say great words and great things on Susan and the team that she has and what TAC provides for county government. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those words, and I look forward to having you back on the show at the end of the session to talk about what happened.
Well, we'll hope that some of our 10 most wanted became wanted by other people too, right? So we'll just have to see how the legislature goes. And Jody, thank you for the opportunity to invite me onto your show.
You're welcome. You've been listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast from the Texas Association of Counties about the people, issues, and all things important to Texans and Texas counties. To learn more about Texas counties and the Texas Association of Counties, visit county.org.